Well, what I know is that I attempted to call their attention. After the report came out, I looked at it, and it had a physical form, but it lives online. You can search it. And I could see that telomeres weren't mentioned, mice weren't mentioned, rodents aren't mentioned. And so I tried to alert them to the fact that they had screwed up, and they blew me off. They wouldn't talk to me.
Something sinister has been brewing in the United States for over a century, and no one saw it coming. Now, with the threat of a disease that's capable of wiping out the entire country's population, all hands are on deck, and scientists are invested in the search for a solution. However, these solutions may be even more deadly than the problem. Just how deadly can it be? What is this mysterious danger that threatens this country? Join us as we explore the mysteries behind the threat that was released in the US. The Looming Danger. A recent Joe Rogan podcast has revealed something unusual and disturbing, a scientific experiment that has gone too far. In this episode, Joe Rogan invited a professor of evolutionary biology, Brett Weinstein, who revealed that an anonymous hacker recently accessed a couple of secret documents, emails, and reports from a research institute in Massachusetts, and believes that the United States might be in danger of an invasion, a potential pandemic. These reports suggested that scientists are about to secretly release thousands of genetically modified mice to the public. Although this might be an excellent initiative to create resistance against the deadly Lyme disease, the plan's secretive nature has raised serious concerns. Why mice? Rodents, especially mice, have been used in medical research for over 50 years. Even though using animals in labs raises ethical concerns, lab mice have helped achieve many scientific breakthroughs because they are very similar to humans in their body structure, genes, and function. However, their usefulness in research goes beyond substituting humans in the lab. The idea of using rats for scientific research might not be a cause for alarm, but releasing these genetically altered versions to the public is, irrespective of the reasons for this action. However, this situation gets a lot more concerning. A specific conspiracy theory involving the Plum Island Animal Disease Center has gained the attention of the masses, suggesting that Lyme disease might be the bioweapon that the US military is trying to battle. This indicates that the threat is not from a non-ally country, but from the US labs themselves. In the 1960s, on a secretive 840-acre island at the entrance to Long Island Sound, scientists at the heavily guarded Plum Island Animal Disease Center were leading the way in US biological weapons research. Their mission? To create dangerous pathogens that could be quietly spread through insects. Jump to 1965, when the nearby town of Old Lyme, Connecticut, became the center of a mysterious illness spread by ticks. Children started experiencing odd skin rashes, constant fatigue, and swollen knees. By 1968, this strange illness was named Lyme disease. A wild conspiracy theory took hold. People believed that Plum Island scientists had created this new disease, which now affects more than 30,000 Americans each year. In 2020, Congress decided to look into this theory with an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, and what was discovered was quite shocking. Aside from Joe Rogan, the amendment's author, Representative Chris Smith from New Jersey, firmly believes there's truth to it. Smith has long pushed for more research into the causes and treatments of Lyme disease. His belief stems from popular books, including Lab 257 by Michael Carroll and Bitten by Chris Newby. In Bitten, Newby interviews Willy Bergdorfer, the scientist who discovered the bacteria that causes Lyme disease, Borrelia burgdorferi. Smith believes that there's way too much evidence to be a conspiracy theory. On the other hand, Plum Island officials have consistently rejected this idea, debunking these theories about their involvement in the outbreak of this deadly disease. In a 2004 article, the lab's former director, Roger Breeze, mocked the claims, suggesting the author of Lab 257 was making things up for clout and to sell books. But it gets more complicated when Richard Pilch, an expert on chemical and biological weapons, acknowledges that there is some evidence both supporting and refuting the conspiracy theory that Lyme disease might be connected to research at Plum Island. He points out that the proximity of Plum Island to Lyme, Connecticut, where the disease was first identified in the 1970s, could suggest a link. Furthermore, records show that scientists at Plum Island were conducting research on pathogens that could be spread by insects. However, Pilch also emphasizes that Borrelia burgdorferi, the bacterium that causes Lyme disease, existed in North America long before it was discovered. For instance, it was found in a 5,300-year-old mummy, which indicates that the disease was present far earlier than the 1970s outbreak. Be it old or new, what impact will releasing this new species have? Frying pan to fire. Now the military has finally answered the call to action and is on a mission to right their wrongs, but according to the anonymous guest, the scientists might have realized that their genetically modified mice could cause more harm than good. Instead of reconsidering the idea, they chose to hide this issue, saying it had been taken care of, which is a strange way to downplay something that could be a huge problem. This Joe Rogan podcast has made people question the true motives of these scientists and what might go wrong. The documents revealed that it could take a year or more before the effects of releasing these modified mice would be seen. This means there wouldn't be any major changes in Lyme disease rates or the tick population for a long time. It seems like the scientists are just guessing and acting like they know more than they do. This also means people would have to deal with a huge number of mice for over a year without knowing if it would even work. Instead of spending that time looking for better cures, they decided to flood the area with mice, which is why they likely kept the plan a secret. When the public found out, the scientists claimed they would test the mice in unpopulated areas first, which sounded fair, but it might have been just to calm the public. Some biologists have pointed out that the genetic modifications could create serious health risks, but the scientists seem to be hiding the full truth. On Joe Rogan's podcast, the guest also mentioned that all the mice used in these experiments came from the same lab, so they might all respond the same way in the lab. However, things could change when the mice are released into the wild, where conditions are very different. One risk is that the parasites might stop infecting the mice and target other animals, causing new diseases. Also, the modifications might push the germs to evolve into stronger strains, which could then affect both the modified and unmodified mice, potentially leading to a new disease outbreak that could harm both wildlife and humans. Another concern is that wild mice could breed with the genetically modified ones, which would mix up the genes in the wild population. This could lead to new hybrid mice with unknown behaviors and roles in the ecosystem, and the original natural mouse genes might be lost. These hybrids could grow faster and bigger than normal mice, creating even more problems. The release of documents revealing these hidden risks has raised a lot of questions about the scientists' intentions. Were they aware of the potential problems? It seems they chose to focus only on the short-term effects, ignoring the possible long-term consequences. In science, transparency and public approval are crucial, especially with genetic experiments that can impact the environment and public health. The public deserves to know what's going on, but the scientists decided to move forward with a risky experiment without thinking about the full consequences. While genetic modification can bring great benefits in medicine, agriculture, and the environment, it also comes with risks. That's why ethical considerations and public involvement are important before taking such big steps. These alleged documents have created further confusion regarding how true this conspiracy theory is, and that brings up the question, what is the Lyme disease? Where did it originate from? Mystic origins. As earlier mentioned, the oldest evidence of Lyme disease was found in a 5,300-year-old mummy named Otzi that was discovered in the Eastern Alps. Scientists have studied the history of Borrelia burgdorferi, the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. One study showed that before the reforestation of New England and the migration to the Midwest in the early 1800s, Lyme disease had been in America for thousands of years. It spread along with ticks from the Northeast to the Midwest. In the 1600s, John Josselyn, a voyager, described many ticks in New England, saying they stuck to people's clothes and even bit through their skin. Similarly, in 1749, Swedish botanist Peter Kalm also found ticks in the forests of New York. However, by the 1800s, many of those forests were gone, and Lyme disease might have been isolated in a few places along the coast and in the Midwest. However, these were just hearsay. The first detailed description of Lyme disease symptoms was noticed in 1764 by John Walker during a visit to a Scottish island. He described pain in the limbs and mentioned a small, reddish creature, likely a tick, that caused the condition. Many people from this area moved to North America in the 1700s, possibly bringing the disease with them. Borrelia DNA has also been found in a tick from Germany, dating back to 1884, and in a mouse from Cape Cod that died in 1894. When Ötzi's body was examined in 2010, scientists discovered that he had the DNA of the Lyme disease bacteria, making him the earliest known case. In Europe, doctors started recognizing Lyme disease symptoms in the 1800s. In 1883, a German doctor described a man with a skin disorder now known as acrodermatitis chronica atrophicans. By 1909, a Swedish doctor, Arvid Afzelius, gave a name to the rash that appeared after a tick bite, erythema migrans. In the following decades, doctors in Europe and America began linking tick bites with neurological symptoms and skin problems, eventually finding penicillin to be an effective treatment. Lyme disease was officially recognized in the United States in 1975, when a cluster of cases, first thought to be juvenile arthritis, was discovered in Connecticut, near the towns of Lyme and Old Lyme, giving the disease its name. Scientists and doctors continued to study the disease, finding ways to treat it, and understanding its transmission through tick bites. The most common sign of Lyme disease is a red rash called erythema migrans, which usually shows up about a week after the tick bite. The rash isn't itchy or painful, and about 70 to 80% of infected people get it. Early symptoms can also include fever, headaches, and feeling very tired. If the disease isn't treated, it can cause problems like facial muscle weakness, joint pain, stiff neck, and heart issues. Some people might also experience shooting pains or tingling in their arms and legs. In the US, the main tick that spreads Lyme disease is called Ixodes scapularis. Ticks need to stay attached to a person for 36 to 48 hours or more to pass on the bacteria. But if you remove a tick within 24 hours, the chance of getting Lyme disease is low. In Europe, a different type of tick, Ixodes ricinus, can spread the bacteria faster. The disease cannot be spread from person to person, from animals, or through food. Doctors diagnose Lyme disease by looking at symptoms, checking for tick exposure, and sometimes testing the blood for antibodies. Blood tests can sometimes give false negative results early on, so testing ticks is not usually helpful. To prevent Lyme disease, people can avoid tick bites by wearing long clothes and using insect repellent with DEET or picaridin. Removing ticks with tweezers is important, and if the tick is full of blood, a doctor might prescribe a single dose of doxycycline to prevent the disease. If an infection develops, antibiotics like doxycycline, amoxicillin, or cefuroxime can treat it. Treatment usually lasts 2 or 3 weeks. Lyme disease is the most common tick-borne illness in the Northern Hemisphere, especially in spring and early summer. It was first discovered in 1979 in Lyme, Connecticut, and was initially thought to be a form of arthritis. The bacteria were identified in 1981. Some people have ongoing symptoms after treatment, called post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, which is different from chronic Lyme disease, a term that scientists no longer use. As of 2023, there were no vaccines for humans, although some were being tested. A vaccine called Limerix was available, but was discontinued in 2002. However, there are vaccines for dogs to protect them from Lyme disease. If scientists are invested in finding a cure to completely eradicate this disease, how serious is the infestation? How deadly is this disease? Around 80% of infections start with a rash at the tick bite site, often near places like the armpit, groin, or behind the knee. Most people don't remember being bitten. The rash usually appears 1 or 2 weeks after the bite and grows about 2 to 3 centimeters each day, eventually reaching up to 70 centimeters. It's typically round or oval, red or bluish, and may have a darker center. In Europe, many cases develop a bullseye pattern, but this is less common in the US. The rash may feel warm but isn't usually itchy or painful. It can take up to 4 weeks to go away if left untreated. Sometimes people with the rash also experience flu-like symptoms such as tiredness, headaches, body aches, fever, and chills. These symptoms may occur even without a rash, and Lyme disease can progress without any visible signs. People who have had a fever for more than 2 days or whose symptoms don't improve despite treatment may be checked for other tick-borne illnesses. Not everyone with Lyme disease shows all the symptoms, and many of the signs overlap with other illnesses. Less than 7% of those infected in the United States show no symptoms, but this may be more common in Europe. In some cases, the bacteria can spread through the body within a few days or weeks. New rashes can appear in different areas, and muscle or joint pain is common. In untreated cases, Lyme disease can lead to neurological issues like headaches, neck stiffness, sensitivity to light, facial paralysis, or nerve pain. Children may also have partial vision loss. Some people experience intense pain, especially at night, along with sleep problems. Facial paralysis occurs in about 5 to 10% of untreated cases in North America and is often accompanied by headaches. Nerve pain happens less often but may go unnoticed. In Europe, a combination of headaches and nerve pain is more common. In some untreated cases, Lyme disease affects the heart, causing palpitations, dizziness, fainting, and shortness of breath. It can disrupt the heart's electrical system, leading to irregular rhythms. Other symptoms of the disease, such as joint pain and headaches, may also occur, but heart issues can be the first sign for some. In Europe, a skin condition may appear as purple lumps on the ear, nipple, or scrotum. Months after infection, untreated people may experience joint swelling and pain, often affecting large joints like the knee or hip. The pain is usually mild but may come and go. In some cases, fluid-filled cysts may form and rupture. Nerve problems, such as numbness or tingling in the hands or feet, have been reported but are rare. There have also been reports of memory and concentration issues, although this is controversial and not seen in Europe. Depression and fibromyalgia are as common in people with Lyme disease as they are in the general population. A chronic skin condition, seen mostly in Europe, can cause the skin to thin and wrinkle, starting with a reddish-blue patch that worsens over time. Temporary solution to the pandemic. As of 2023, there were no vaccines for Lyme disease available for humans. The only human vaccine that made it to the market was called Limerix. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration initially approved Limerix based on large trials with over 10,000 people. However, its use in everyday medical practice didn't pick up quickly due to high costs, which were often not covered by insurance. Some people who got the vaccine reported side effects, including autoimmune problems, and a series of lawsuits were filed. Despite investigations finding no link between the vaccine and these health complaints, public fear grew, leading to the vaccine being taken off the market. When Limerix was discontinued in 2002, a company called Valneva began the process of developing a newer vaccine, the VLA-15. This vaccine is also based on the same bacterial protein. In 2020, Pfizer joined the effort to help develop it, and the two companies started running trials in multiple locations in the US and Europe. They were planning to give volunteers 3 doses followed by a booster shot after a year. Research on other vaccines is also ongoing. One experimental vaccine uses mRNA to trigger a quick immune response to tick bites, helping the body remove ticks before they spread Lyme disease. Tests on animals showed that the vaccine helped protect against Lyme if only one tick was attached, but it was less effective with multiple ticks. For dogs, there are 3 Lyme disease vaccines available. One uses dead bacteria, and 2 others use proteins from the bacteria to help dogs' immune systems kill the bacteria before they can infect the animal. Treatment for Lyme disease mainly involves antibiotics. Doxycycline is usually the first choice for early infection, but other options like amoxicillin are used for children or pregnant women. People with more severe Lyme disease symptoms, like joint or heart problems, may need stronger antibiotics, sometimes given through an IV. In some cases, if symptoms return after treatment, a second round of antibiotics may be necessary. However, longer treatments beyond 28 days aren't recommended because there's no proof they work better. Even after successful treatment, some people continue to have joint swelling or pain. For these cases, doctors might recommend physical therapy, medications to reduce inflammation, or other treatments. This persistent situation got the attention of scientists, and they decided to step in with another solution: curing a century-old pandemic. At the time the plan was made, Lyme disease was spreading rapidly in Nantucket, and the island had the highest rate of the disease. While black-legged ticks were the main cause, mice were the key carriers of the bacteria that spread the disease. The lab mice in the plan were genetically changed to resist the bacteria, meaning they wouldn't spread the disease to ticks, which then infect humans. The idea came from a professor at MIT who shared it with the Nantucket Board of Health and a group of about 20 residents who supported it. However, some people thought it was strange that only 20 people were involved in making such a big decision, especially since they may not have fully understood the pros and cons. Lyme disease had caused so much harm in the area that people were willing to try anything for a solution. Between 1992 and 2001, Nantucket had the highest rate of Lyme disease in the US, and the island was still facing serious outbreaks in later years. The scientists focused on white-footed mice, which were identified as the main source of the disease. These mice passed the bacteria to ticks, which then infected other mice and humans. The plan was to use genetically modified mice that couldn't pass the disease to stop the cycle between mice and ticks. Scientists believed this would lower the rate of Lyme disease. To do this, they had to find the genes responsible for disease resistance in the mice and multiply them, creating a population of mice with strong immunity to Lyme disease. The plan was to release more than 100,000 of these genetically modified mice in batches of 20,000 to 40,000 over a year. If the experiment worked in Nantucket, the mice would be released in larger areas across the Northeast. The scientists were confident in their idea, but when the plan became public, many people were skeptical. If the idea was so great, why was it kept secret? There were concerns that the risks could be greater than the benefits, since the scientists were experimenting with something never done before. Some feared the genetically modified mice could create new problems. On another podcast, the guest suggested that scientists might have realized the mice could cause harm, but instead of rethinking the plan, they covered up any concerns. The documents revealed that it could take a year or more to see if the mice reduced Lyme disease or affected the tick population, so everything was a guessing game. Critics argued that the scientists seemed more focused on proving they were smart rather than finding a better cure for Lyme disease. The public was further angered when it became clear that the scientists were hiding important information about the potential risks of the experiment, despite claiming they would test the mice in unpopulated areas first. It was also revealed that scientists found mice to be poor models for certain experiments, leading to results far different from what they expected. An article from the National Library of Medicine agreed with this viewpoint. According to this article, even though mice share many similarities with humans, there are big genetic and physical differences that make it hard to create mouse models that truly represent human diseases. Some people argue that the way mice react to inflammation doesn't match how humans respond, although this has been debated. Researchers often use simple methods to speed up disease development in mice or to cause diseases that don't normally appear in them. These methods have had mixed results in leading to treatments that work in humans. For example, mice don't easily develop atherosclerosis unless scientists make extreme genetic changes, like removing the ApoE gene, which doesn't happen in humans with the disease. Cancer is another example. While mouse models have missed some important features of human cancers that evolve slowly, studies in mice helped discover key immune responses, leading to a big breakthrough in cancer immunotherapy. Even more surprising, the guest claimed scientists have been working with journalists to keep the truth about these mice hidden from the public. Some journalists, after contacting experts, lost interest when they learned this fact, which raises questions about what's really going on. The modified mice carry worse diseases, and while they might help get rid of Lyme disease, they could also start new outbreaks. Since there are so many of these mice, the diseases would spread quickly, making them harder to control. The guest even suggested that scientists may not be able to manage the consequences of their experiments, causing the entire ecosystem to suffer. The genetically modified mice are not only spreading diseases, but they're also outcompeting wild mice. Because they reproduce much faster, they will likely overrun the wild mice, upsetting the natural balance. This would create an ecosystem full of genetically engineered mice, which doesn't sound good, especially considering their ability to spread new diseases quickly. Beyond just affecting wild mice, these altered mice could also disrupt food chains. Since they have enhanced abilities, including better hunting skills, they could wipe out their prey quickly. This could lead to a major imbalance, and once their prey is gone, these mice might invade homes and public spaces, increasing the risk of disease spreading to humans. While the scientists may have been able to control the situation in the lab, releasing these mice into the wild could lead to very different and dangerous outcomes. Lingering web of conspiracies. This is not the first time the United States would be caught in a web of conspiracy theories regarding the invention of bioweapons. For instance, back in 1981, when the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention first reported the HIV/AIDS epidemic, there were disturbing rumors that the virus was created by the CIA to target homosexuals and African Americans. A renowned figure, South African President Thabo Mbeki, solidly believes the theory is true. He rejected the scientific view that the virus started in Africa and accused the US government of making it in military labs. Another East African ecologist, Wangari Maathai, also supported this theory when she won the Nobel Peace Prize. Some believe that the government intentionally gave homosexual men the virus during hepatitis B experiments in New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles in 1978. Others link it to Richard Nixon, who merged the US Army's Biological Warfare Department with the National Cancer Institute in 1971. Although Dr. Robert Gallo from the National Cancer Institute and Dr. Luc Montagnier from the Pasteur Institute in Paris, who both discovered HIV, disagree on how it began, most scientists think the virus jumped from monkeys to humans in the 1930s. However, with the help of an alleged KGB defector, the CIA revealed that the rumors were concocted by the Soviet Union in the heat of the Cold War. This KGB defector, Ilya Zerkvilov, claimed that the Soviet agency started its campaign through the pro-Soviet Indian newspaper Patriot. The newspaper claimed to have received an anonymous letter from a well-known American scientist and anthropologist who claimed that AIDS was manufactured at Fort Detrick by genetic engineers. He also claimed that the deadly, mysterious disease was a result of the Pentagon's experiments to develop new and extremely lethal biological weapons. The claim suggested that scientists from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention were sent to Africa and Latin America to find dangerous viruses that were not found in Asia or Europe. According to the story, these viruses were then studied in Atlanta and Fort Detrick, leading to the development of AIDS. Ironically, many Soviet scientists were asking for help from American researchers to deal with the growing AIDS problem in the Soviet Union, while they were insisting that the virus came from natural sources. The US refused to assist as long as the false information campaign continued. The Siegel report and many articles were dismissed as nonsense by both Western and Soviet scientists. Dr. Meinrad Koch, an AIDS expert from West Berlin, called the Siegel report utter nonsense and said it was an evil, fake scientific claim. Other scientists, like Dr. Viktor Zhdanov from Moscow, also pointed out mistakes in the report. The head of the USSR Academy of Medical Sciences said he believed the virus had natural origins. Scientists from around the world, including Paris, Berlin, India, and Belgium, called the rumors about AIDS lies and not based on science. Though Siegel himself never claimed his report was a fact, the way it was repeated often left out important details, making it sound more credible than it was. U.S. embassy officials worked hard to clear things up by writing letters to newspapers and holding press conferences. These efforts led to some newspapers printing corrections and apologies. U.S. reports also explained that it was impossible to create a virus as complex as AIDS back then. Medical research had only reached the point of cloning simple viruses. The main source used in the story, the Siegel report, even made basic errors about geography, such as saying New York was the closest big city to Fort Detrick, even though Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. are all closer. the Gorbachev administration reacted angrily to U.S. efforts to expose Soviet disinformation about AIDS and launched a campaign to defend itself. The Soviet Union tried to block U.S. officials' attempts to correct false information and pressure news agencies that had retracted their stories. For instance, on December 3, 1986, Literaturная Gazeta criticized a Brazilian newspaper for taking back its report on the AIDS rumors. In 1987, the Soviet news agency Novosti spread more claims from Congo, insisting the virus was created in U.S. military labs and warning against contact with Americans. In 1988, Sovetskaya Rossiya defended their right to report different views, with Novosti's chief saying they got much of the AIDS coverage from foreign sources and that the press was free under the new policy of openness. However, the Mitrokhin archive revealed that, after facing protests from the US and criticism from international scientists, Gorbachev and his advisors worried the disinformation might hurt the Soviet image. By August 1987, Soviet officials told the US that the AIDS story was no longer supported, and Soviet media coverage mostly stopped, though it still appeared occasionally in some developing countries. Despite this, by 1992, 15% of Americans believed that the AIDS virus was created in a government lab. A 2005 study showed that almost 50% of African Americans thought AIDS was man-made. Over 25% believed it was created in a lab, and 12% thought the CIA was responsible. These conspiracy theories, though debunked by scientists, continued to spread. In popular culture, artists like Kanye West and REM referenced the idea that AIDS was invented by the government in their songs. In South Africa, former President Thabo Mbeki cited the same theory about Fort Detrick when questioning the science of HIV. In 1992, Yevgeny Primakov, head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, admitted that the KGB was behind the articles claiming the US created AIDS. KGB defector Vasily Mitrokhin exposed the role of Dr. Siegel in spreading this false story. A book by Jack Kohler later described how East Germany's secret police worked with the KGB to spread the rumors. This disinformation campaign contributed to mistrust in medical authorities, which affected people's willingness to follow medical advice on AIDS treatment. Studies showed that those who believed the conspiracy were less likely to practice safe sex or take prescribed medications. Journalist Joshua Yaffa argued that delays in getting antiretroviral treatments in South Africa, influenced by the misinformation, may have cost as many as 330,000 lives. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.